Board on this.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everybody. As you know, I'm Dan Winter, back with you again, and I'm here joined by Professor Ralph Otterpohl from Germany.
Hello.
And as you know, Dalia Ali from Egypt.
Hello.
You know that we've just done these last 4 recordings with Dalia about her intense communications with Thoth and that family, which have some pretty serious messages. And Ralph Otterpohl spoke at our last conference, among other things, and the recording is at the conference recordings, fractalfield.com/2024. And among other things, Ralph talked about some of his work with hygiene, about releasing ghosts from the land and what effect that had. But first, shall we do just a little intro, Ralph, who you are, just a 2-minute, if you like?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm basically a water engineer from water engineering, but I have dealt with geomancy since a long time. And so this is something where I now find that working with the environment, restoring the land, we do this with like improving the biology and regenerative agriculture, agroforestry, food forests, family food forests, and all these measures. But it turned out the most important issue of all is to take care of the flows of vital energy, because that's the base of all, of growth, of happiness. And so that's where my 2 fields of interest merged nicely. And so now I'm a geomancy teacher and like rural development consultant.
And what university were you associated with?
I had been teaching at Hamburg University of Technology until recently, but now I've retired from that, and now I'm a independent freelance consultant.
Most of Professor Ralph's books, many of the books that we're including his recent one, focus on regenerative agriculture. And it's wonderful that Ralph has integrated this spiritual aspect of how the plasma spirits of ancestors in the land, and that's what we want to talk about today. And now maybe a little more intro from Dalia. Dalia has been telling us stories about her integration with the Thoth memory, which have been amazing, and her background in Egypt, and she's also a filmmaker. Dalia?
Yeah, my name is Dalia Ali, and I was born in Egypt, and professionally my craft is film editing and filmmaking, specifically documentary films. And I've been on the spiritual journey, training in the background as a shaman for my galactic family for years now. I would say since 2015, 2016, but really it's been a preparation all my life, really. And recently I've had a major awakening experience where I've connected to the life essence of and the Ka of Thoth and Horus and other female beings in like Isis in my ancient galactic family. And they've been guiding me to do this shamanic work with the land. So I've been traveling around and clearing, let's just say, as I go. So I've been doing work here in Egypt, and before that, it was in Germany, Berlin. So far, it's been Berlin and Egypt.
And those are some of the stories we're going to tell today. The last 4 films we made with Dalia are at physicsofsoul.com, and the plasma physics of soul is a conversation for today, actually. We're going to use examples of recent work that Professor Ralph and Dalia have done about releasing ancestral spirits. And so I thought, now this is my excuse, as usual, to do the 5-minute, well, here's what I think the science is. This is my 5-minute intro to how I would see the science here. So remember when we believed, after some work with things like Therify plasma and other work, that we understand a bit more about the physics of how ghosts are actually released. Specifically, as you know, we've been discussing the physics of death for many years, goldenmean.info/immortality. And the Cleuvet form constants you see at death are an indication, among others, that death is a compression event electrically in order to embed you into that array and achieve distribution literally, we call it coherent longitudinal array, which we now believe is literally ancestor memory. And we think we understand a lot about the physics, that there's a certain frequency signature. Included among those would be the Schumann cascade, which makes you centripetal enough to embed in that array and be absorbed into ancestral memory, collective unconscious communion of saints. So, for example, if we really understood about the physics of death and the physics of ghost and the physics of living plasma, I was just thinking today, well, maybe now we understand more about Christianity. Dahlia and I were joking the other day about You Do Not Want to Be the Left Behind. It's the most popular book beside the Bible among religious fundamentalists. And the left behind are those who cannot go through the rapture. Now, they say that when the rapture comes, the ancestor spirits will be released. Now, we actually believe we understand more of the physics here, that for example, we know that when galactic and planetary alignments converge, the plasma density of the Earth becomes increasingly centripetal, literally when the rapture comes. And these alignments, what sometimes called the photon cloud and the galactic superwave, many names for these things. So these compression events, we think, when the globe actually has the plasma centripetal, quote unquote, going to the next dimension, means the next superposed harmonics in the cascade of compression, enabling the release of what we might call dizzy ghosts, or those who did not succeed at the time of death in being embedded into the ancestral array. And so their plasma was then localized and a bit stuck. And this gets us today's conversation with the experience of Professor Ralph and Dahlia. So Dahlia had an experience where Thoth went with her to an incredible graveyard near Berlin, a Berlin Wall, and did some incredible, powerful release there. I think we should, but let's do, Ralph, your story first, if that's okay. So Ralph, when I was super impressed when Ralph told this story, I think we were on vacation or something. Was it island near Denmark? I know you've done this work in many places, but you actually discovered that kind of like the whole village seemed depressed and the fertility was bad. And you discovered there's lots of dead spirits from wars and they're stuck. And therefore, and when you worked on that, it made a huge difference. I thought that was a wonderful story, Ralph. Whoops. Are you muted?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was really, really impressed. That was sort of how this work came to me, to work on the larger scale, and that was on the island of Helgoland in the North Sea. It was beautiful weather. I had a great time, and still my energy was going away. I felt worse and worse. And then I realized that the very environment was like sucking my energy. It was so low that I sort of got unhappy without doing anything in best weather, in like being on the beach all day and outside. That is very unusual. And so then I researched for the reasons for that. And it was like the big energy line, the ley line of the island, a huge one, was sucked out by parasitic entities, and that was sort of making the energy so low that you can actually not really feel happiness so easily.
You didn't, and very few smiles were visible.
Yeah, absolutely. So people, and that place is actually known for this. It's basically so beautiful. But you don't tend to go there because it's a low energy place, as people feel. Obviously, people are more or less not so happy. And the opposite example would be the island of Sylt, that is radiant and high energy, and that's where the wealthy people go. And so that's something where I started working on it, and I could actually release these energy suckers, and the ghosts of deceased ones always play a role as well. So it's always to prioritize, to find priority. What's the main issue here? Otherwise, you can work for years and years and not proceed. So you must start with the with the big ones first. And that was sort of an eye-opener to me. And since I've done a lot more work in this direction.
But there were a lot of ghosts from the war is also there, right? And obviously people are really wondering, well, how did you fix it?
Yeah, basically, the connection to war is the typical one. And meanwhile, I strongly believe, I have reason to believe, that the reason that wars are made so often is to traumatize the energy fields to be able to suck it out by entities that are pushing people to war. And that's a mixture of deceased ones that are really still working in a very negative direction, and parasitic entities that, well, I learned from Dan not to call them demons anymore, because that's a specific category, but parasitic entities is sort of describing the whole bunch. And how to release them is something you need help. So the thing is that I used to work with Archangel Michael and so on, but then I sort of realized that is a system in its own, and I don't want to work with systems that I don't fully understand. And so I started to work directly with Source. I'm asking Source, with my fractal connection to Source, in my power with the connection of Source, I asked suitable beings to be sent to help with these parasitic entities, to send them into being confronted with what they do. And the technique is nicely from the anthroposophes, that is the angel cloud of angels that will grab the parasitic entity and work it through. And through that process, they are realizing the wrongdoings, because they are stealing vital energy. So it's the worst theft that is possible, because that's stealing life, basically, from plants, from nature, from humans. And it's not acceptable, and we shouldn't accept this anymore. And it's growing, it's getting more and more. And that's what Dahlia also recently said. This is going rampant, and we need to act now. Otherwise, everybody will be depressed, and that's not a good future. And so let's work on that. And the release is relatively simple, but you must stand for yourself. You must be strong from your heart, know the technique a little bit. And one important thing, you need to check the level of these entities. So there are levels I wouldn't touch, because then you can get into deep trouble. So I check on the scale of easy to what I can do with all my efforts, and then I check, are they in the middle or are they to the upper end, so upper echelon of these entities. And then I'm getting more careful, and the upper ones, you need more force. You really need to stand there and wham, yeah, we really need to do it. We take our stance because it's our right, and we defend our place, and it works nicely. So it's really, really good, and sometimes it's really shocking for people that are in my classes where I do this, but I keep them at a distance, that they keep with themselves and not get entangled in that. But it's basically something I teach people. It's a little bit advanced level to work with this. But what is relatively simple is to work with the ghosts, stuck ghosts of deceased ones. And that already changes a lot, because they are everywhere. There are hundreds of millions of stuck ghosts that urgently need to be helped, because they are desperate in many cases. Not everybody, some are enjoying this, but it's many are desperate, and it's good to help them to leave.
I can just see you there, Dr. Ralph. There'd be other things like access to ground if you're well grounded. Also, if you have access to a magnetic line cross, gives you leverage. But the main thing, I think you point this out very well, is actually you're feeling deep inside that you have pure intention. And therefore, in other words, you understand deeply what's of service to all. And therefore, that deep understanding and feeling gives you leverage. That's beautiful, Dr. L.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what protects us. So if we work from a perspective of being up above, being the great shaman, we would get struck by lightning, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, there's a humility of pure intent here. Well, that's so wonderful. I think let's move to Dahlia now, just a contrasting example. So what we wanted to parallel here, the story that impressed me again was, so Dahlia has felt that when she's really embedded in this body and memory of Thoth, the lineage that from Egyptians she's really deeply into, and that adds momentum and inertia. So she's in this graveyard near the Berlin Wall, and oh my God, do you want to tell that story, Dahlia, or what do you think?
Yeah, and I also want to reflect on some things that were coming through as I was hearing you and Dr. Raf talk. I think it's just important for us to remember, and I often would channel the earth consciousness, like we're all visitors here in one way or another. We're all, and the earth, how it like spoke to me, it's like, this is my body, it's the living body of the earth, and we are all visitors, and we're meant to be caretakers of the land, and we are meant to have like to not overextend our stay and take more than the resources that we need, but we're also meant to be responsible guardians of the land. And so this is as a universal message that we need to remember that.
Nice. Yes.
And so this ties into that act of not necessarily shepherding, it's being the custodians of the land. And every person has a responsibility towards their presence on the earth. Because people think that when they buy land, they own the land. But even if you think that you own the land, it is still not your land. It's still the earth's body. And you should be respectful of that. And you should honor that always.
Nice.
So I apologize if there is like noise in the background. I just yeah.
We can hear you fine. We're hearing you.
Okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and so I wanted to share that and understand that every person has a responsibility. And like you said, Dr. Roth, there is the top level, big boss level entities that maybe some people are not meant to deal with directly unless they're in a group and they can unify their powers and strength together. But there are the lost souls that are really, they don't want to be here, but they don't necessarily, they're in some state of limbo. And because it's either because there's so much trauma in the land, so even the good spirits are not able to ascend in a good way back to source, because there's so much confusion in the field that they got stuck, or that the way they exited was full of trauma that also misguided them in that sense, like that was shocking to their system, and then they got stuck. But it's in the example of the Berlin Wall, the cemetery right next to Mauer Park in the Mitte area. That's where I started working with Thoth. And back to the humility, none of this would have happened without my connection to the life essence, the Ka of Thoth. Me as a human, just in a human vessel, I'm not able to necessarily do at that great length, because he deals with the boss level entities. And there is no dialogue, there is no question, and there is no negotiation there. It is as it is. And that's because of his aura and his powerful essence. That's not because of me. That's because of these higher dimensional beings. When we're able to ask them and connect with them in a pure intentioned way, they can come in. And if you're an open channel and in a clear vessel with trust, they are able then to utilize your vessel as a tool to do the great work that we are all capable really of doing. And so I wanted to share, even the lost souls, they could be like, even if you have basic level shamanic understanding where you deal with energies, you sense energies, you're able to, in your hometown, in your neighborhood, to see and to go and ask if there are any misguided souls that are stuck, and maybe sense that in the field, and so help assist with the movement of those energies. And you don't have to deal with the the top level ones. You can set your intention clear to the frequency of lost souls who would like to find a way, and you can visualize a way. You can open a portal and allow and invite them over to your through your own personal connection to source. You can be their guide through your own connections so that they also can find their way out, and that could be just a way of participating.
I think you said that you actually saw that somehow the cemetery was brighter in many sense of the word, and even also you worked in that schoolyard, you noticed more smiles, that it actually changed things.
Absolutely. I always get the smiles as a confirmation after. And there is the bliss frequency. And I'm sure a lot of people can tune into that. It's almost like the air is more crisp and the light is more glowing. And you're able to sense that. So after I've done the work in the cemetery, I went and walked there. He also took me there because he has a way of showing me things, and I go and I don't know why we're going there, but then I saw that he wanted to show me what it feels like now after we've done the work. So before we did the work, it was all gloomy and people were really sad. Everybody is walking, sort of looking down, and what you were describing, Dr. Ralph. And after we did the work, all I could see was the smiles. Oh, but the first time we worked, the gateway of the cemetery, all the gateways were closed. So that could also show you, because cemetery caretakers, if they're closing the gate, also that doesn't help the spirits, the lost ones, to find their way back home. They're because they're still between the human life and consciousness, and if they're confused and they see that the gates are closed, they might get stuck there too. So the act of opening the gates. So what happened after we did the work the first time, and I went there to visit 2 days later, the gate was open. At the gate to the cemetery, it was a huge gate. And that's where I did the work the first time. It was not the main gate where people enter. It was a side gate where they had the chopped wood on the left. And so that's where I did the work. And because you're setting up the field, automatically things will harmonize as a result. So 2 days later, the gate was completely open. And I could feel that the flow and that the smiles are still there. And that bliss frequency was all around like a glimmer in the air. And you could feel it anytime you walk around. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And so we're talking about the, sort of the electrical aspect of ghosts and plasma and ancestor memory is actually a circulation in what we call the longitudinal or plasma array, or literally what Aboriginals call songline dreaming track. And they're very conscious that if you're not circulating ancestral memory, you haven't had a good day. And so if it isn't circulating, and then there's the aspect of the fertility aspect. Do you want to speak to that a bit, Professor Ralph, as well?
Yeah, sure. There is an old saying, da wächst kein Gras mehr in German. So that means no grass grows anymore. And that is like a word for a devastated field. So after war, people say, da wächst kein Gras mehr. So it's so devastating that even plants don't grow. And that's a real observation. And meanwhile, I have, sort of very clear experience with like places where plants grow nicely, where the energy is high, and where energy is low. And so that's one of the main factors for all growing trees, for agriculture, for gardening, but also like for like feeling happy in houses. So the level of energy is the most crucial thing. And so looking at that and sensing that, taking care of it is crucial. And this is really a sort of emergency call. So it's like really we need to take care of it. It's not taken care by others as it was until recently. We were children taken care of, but now we are getting adult, and we need to take care of our own environment. We have to take care of like not being sucked out by stuck ghosts or by parasitic entities, or also synthetic entities. That's an increasing problem. So we have like programmed life forms that are like coming in through Wi-Fi, through internet, through mobile phones, and so on. It's a huge issue, and so we have to clean up. So, like as we learn to clean our teeth daily, we have to do our etheric hygiene daily, and that includes the surroundings. And that's something what is really beautiful, because like when I clear up something, so I free a ley line, and the energy is rising from say it has been as low as 20 or 30% of the natural level that would be there, and you can raise it very fast to around 60-70%. It never just jumps to 100, because that's a task for people living there. That's the task for following up. And in like conversation with the line, they are not very talkative, obviously. So we are little ants for them. One has known me, so it's also interesting. They can know you. And then there's one nearby where I'm now at present. And that's a line we worked on with our local geomancy group. And we wanted to like get in touch, but it was sort of repelling us a bit. And then we asked why, and it was like, will you come back? This is not for just being here once, but the line wanted reliability. It wanted us to come back. And only when we gave it the picture, yes, we will come here, we live here, we come here, and we have done that. So you must be really also following up on that. And so that was nice. And this line was actually opening up.
Yes.
And a recent example from last weekend, I gave a geomancy seminar. So giving it in December in northern Germany is maybe not the best idea. So it was pretty nasty weather. We were in a greenhouse with lousy heating, and that was a place where they produce seeds, so a seed producing operation, starting up with young people. And one of the ladies there, she has worked with geomancy, and she knew it was horrible. And so they invited me to give a seminar on how to clear that up. And we did that. And also in that place, it was the bad situation was initially created by traumatization, and in this case by the Nazis. So the Nazis did a lot of dark rituals, and these led to like entities, parasitic entities, to suck out these energies, because that's their allies. They have to deliver this, as it seems. And so even though that was like long time ago, that was still active because nobody has stopped it. And stopping it was sort of like I described, and it took maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and now the whole land feels different. Everybody was relieved. So wow. And so this probably has saved this seed company, because they were in the beginning, people were frustrated, people were leaving again, and so on. And now the energy is good. The plants will grow better. Not so many snails, because also when the energy is low, you will have infestations with different pests. And it all plays together, and it's the key issue. So if we don't get that done, it will get very, very difficult.
It's so simple and elegant. You know, we have proven now that the availability of centripetal force is the specific reason a seed germinates. And obviously, the compression in the array, the fractality, the harmonics that enable implosion, these must be present in that array to make it centripetal, which is why stone circles and pyramids cause seeds to germinate measurably. So we can describe the physics beautifully. And the psychological side of that is that if ancestor plasma is all stuck in that array, it's not going to circulate. So the physics fits beautifully. Professor Ralph's story is so powerful. So Dahlia, did you want to comment at that or?
Yeah, I just when you mentioned the parasites of the earth, the soil, the snails, and all of that, I just thought about that heron, the gray heron. That when we did the call, the work with Thoth, and the bird showed up after we created the fructality in the field and the lake in the park. That's also in Mita, and the lotus flowers bloomed out of season. And the gray
Cool.
heron showed up in the same day, and that's also got to because you're creating that magnetic field that is implosive, and that fractality, but also the idea of having birds on the land in terms of like, because they catch the worms literally, and they might have an actual function in terms of like maintaining the healthiness of the soil in some way. So they have an esoteric symbol, but also they have a function in the ecosystem. That's just what came to mind.
Yeah. And when Professor Ralph mentioned about that some of the parasitic entities appear to arrive in a sense robotically with too much, 5G towers and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so that this high frequency choppy electrosmog is actually delivering parasites. And Dahlia had quite a lesson to teach the other day about the entity she saw behind that, the spider woman. And several have confirmed this sense of the spiders. And the message Dahlia taught at that point was, don't shoot the messenger, but rather understand the function of what appears to be a parasite.
Yeah, because if there is a bleed in the field caused by the unconsciousness of humans, let's just say it, or these like stuck ghosts, it creates a bleed in the field, and so these entities will come feed on that bleed. And just understanding that the spider woman is a sacred entity in that way, and she's not necessarily doing that to harm us, is a way of the ecosystem balancing itself out also. And those higher dimensional beings, they have a function as predators as well. So it comes on different levels, but I feel like it's important to understand what we're dealing with, but what's most important is to understand how to clear the land and participate in functional, practical ways. But I think what we were talking about in terms of just sensing the energy of a place, and if you feel that if you go to a place, you arrive and your health is sort of going down, and you feel sad or stressed or depressed with no actual reason, like you said, Dr. Ruff, like the weather was perfect, and yet there is so much heavy energy. I think that is a clue that there is work that needs to be done on the ancestral level and also on the energetic level. But I think the problem, like you said, Dr. Ruff, and Dan also, is like, because we have an emergency call, because there's just so much of this distortion now, like we mentioned before, the 2/3 already distorted. There is so much that needs to be corrected and cleared. And so and we need more shamans. We need
Yeah.
an army of shamans. We need
Where's
to
the
be able
shaman
to
school?
train. We need a shaman school.
Actually, Ralph is cooking shaman school and Dahlia too. And maybe let's also talk a little bit about how you came to perceive these things. So Dahlia, would you say have a little bit of clairvoyance? Ralph, would you say yours is more kinesthetic? How you perceive these things?
You can go ahead and share, Dr. Ruff, and I can follow.
Yeah. So for me, it was very difficult. I was so much in my head as an engineer, and so I didn't really proceed until I detoxed from mercury poisoning. And also, I have released some psychological trauma that was not even really severe as it looks for an adult, but it was sort of holding my perception down, and then I could start perceiving. And today I'm really good. So I'm clairsentient. Sometimes I see things, And obviously, this is something everybody can learn. Everybody is clear sentient. So that's what I teach in my classes, how to perceive the like elemental beings. And so there are so many positive beings that need to be like, well, looked after, being in touch with it. And the love for the land, the love for the place is already increasing the energy levels, obviously. And the perception can be helped by simple tools like divining rods or a pendulum and so on. And the key thing is to do this in a very grounded way. And so it's probably not advisable to like link up with higher beings like Dahlia does, unless you're very well trained and you know exactly what you do. Otherwise, that may be very dangerous. But on the other hand, you can learn from the bottom up to how to perceive and learn these different techniques that are not very difficult. And now many groups are forming. So we have many local geomancy groups. They meet every second Sunday or something like that. And that's encouraging. So the interest is peaking. So my classes are full. And so that's, yeah, it's a great sign. So that's
It's great.
And so that's something where we will see a lot more people doing it. But at the moment, I also see, I agree to Dahlia, that a lot of the land is like low energy. And sort of we need really some powerful moves to free ourselves and to like make the regions radiant. And we have a lot of challenges also on the physical level. So like, as you may know, like we have like with wind energy, we have a complete craziness in Germany. And they seem to cover the whole land with such wind energy
Yeah, which are
units.
horrible for the magnetic life. Yeah, yeah.
Completely horrific. And now it seems there's a huge energy center in Germany, Paderborn, in the middle of Germany.
Paderborn.
And it looks, yeah, Paderborn. If you drive there, they encirculate this with thousands of huge, tall of these turbines. And it would make perfect sense to cut off people from the vital power. It's absolutely crazy.
That's intense. That's intense. Yeah, that's a very important point. You know, we're talking about how you began to perceive these things. We have our friend Stefan Cardino, who was a geomancer, quite advanced teacher, but then he had this sacrocranial adjust and he had this kind of rush of Kundalini. And then he became clairvoyant. He could see the Hartmann-Curry-Pay line. So that's what I was thinking of, you know, how you began to perceive. Dahlia, would you call yourself a little clairvoyant sometimes, or?
I would say so. Things I also sense things. So when I'm working in the moment, I do not think at all. Like there is no thought. There is no. I have to be clear-minded. I have to have no thoughts so that I'm able to be a clear channel and do what's necessary to move the energies with the guidance of thought. And so I do not, while I'm working, I do not perceive things and I do not ask any questions because that was more safer for my human vessel not to be exposed. Because at the end of the day, the human vessel, when you know what happens or what is happening or what caused these entities or what these entities are doing, that could alter your neutrality. I must be very neutral and be a pure channel in that way. So I am not shown exactly what is happening while I'm working, but after the fact, I could reflect, but I prefer not to ask questions because I think I can feel the energy of these entities as I'm working with them. And I perceive some of them at certain points. I would witness thoughts like what he's doing in my body, lifting an entity like so high up and just lifting it so much higher up than me, and I perceive that it's a huge sized entity, sort of like Hulk type beings.
Hulk.
And yeah, that kind of like level of size. And these are very stubborn energies. And so it's better that I do not see when I'm working. But I do sense them, and what you were saying, Dr. Raf, is sometimes it takes 15 minutes, and it's true. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes about an hour. It depends what kind of entities you're working with. But if the worst ones I've ever dealt with are the ones found in children's schools and on playgrounds. Unfortunately, these are even worse and much bigger than the ones that I found in the Mauer Park cemeteries. Like, we're talking there are types of ghosts that maybe belong to rich and powerful people, and they just don't want to let go of that materialistic power, and so they remain and they wreak havoc that way. So it's a stubborn existence because they're latching on to a certain level materialistic existence. And so these are stubborn, dead ghosts. But the other entities that are predatory in nature that are found on school children are much, much worse, on the playgrounds. Much, much worse. And
That's a bit scary.
Yeah. There is something I want to say to that. We shouldn't really look at this as a big disaster and things are going very bad and there is hardly any chance to recover. This is our exercise. It's our theater where we have challenges, and the challenges are growing, but our methods and the means are growing as well. And in the young generation, like Dalia and even younger, there would be more people. It's a small percentage as it seems, but some of them are so good without any training. And so there are a lot more people than we think. They are not doing this in an open way, maybe, but just as they know how to do these things, and I know examples for that. They do amazing things just by passing by, and so I think I'm optimistic that we get this going. But on the other hand, this widespread ignorance is so unfortunate. It's like if people are willingly not seeing reality, that's something what is sort of inviting problems, and that should not be done.
That's why we're here. Yes, yes. Well, maybe since maybe you wanted to say a bit more then about. And Dahlia made the point that we shouldn't consider these, even the plasma entities looking at the souls of kids, necessarily as just evil, but rather as part of a very larger plan where the humans are being sort of. For example, we gave the example. Well, when you put the wolves. And they're not exactly a parasite, they're a predator. But when you put the wolves in with the deer at Yellowstone, the deer got a whole lot healthier. But that's a little bit hard to swallow when you're talking about the souls of kids. But maybe
I agree, Dan, but I want to clarify something. I see a difference between man-made, human-made parasitic entities that are created, like Dr. Arf mentioned, the Nazi rituals, the black magic rituals, ritual sacrifices, stuff that predatory on children. That's not necessarily the same level of higher dimensional beings that I'm talking about. This is man made out of ignorance. And so this is where, based on my understanding, this is where the confusion is. So from the big picture, we can understand that everything has a function. But in our day-to-day reality, we must be in complete discernment and not be wishy-washy about any of these entities that are predatory on lives. I do not want to understand why a predator, even not just entities, I do not need to understand why a predatory man, for example, would do what he does. I do not need to justify or understand where they're coming from. And it just needs to stop. And so this is the clear distinction that there has to be more bias and more intentional clarity within ourselves that this cannot go on in the way that it has been. We can still be in love, radiating love, big picture love, divine central love, centripetal love that involves everyone. But when it comes to a presence of an entity or an abusive person, I cannot extend love to them while they're abusive. They must be dealt with in a way that they're able to find their own souls. And that's not our role to give them love, because that's their existence. They exist in a predatory way. They must learn how to find their own source on their own. So we must stop giving them love and allow them to find their own source of divine love. So just wanted to clarify that.
Absolutely. So I want to enforce that. So all the craziness that is happening, that is a lot more than openly known, is unacceptable completely. And even though many of the perpetrators are victims as well, so people that have been traumatized as children become traumatizers when they are grown up. So this cycle needs to be cut. And one thing is to deal with trauma in people, what gets easier and easier. I work with that as well. And so the release of trauma and entanglement, that makes people more capable of dealing with this. And there's one important thing. So if we work from a perspective of I'm the good guy, we are already trapped. So that's duality. So when we are the good ones, we enforce or we give power to the bad thing. So yin yang and all that. So let's get out of that. So we get the level above that. We look from our hearts. We look, what is the thing that we need to, or we want to contribute to? So more radiant place, more happy people, stop these nasty predators. And so that's something, what is a decision beyond I'm the good one, because the bad ones are the good ones as well in their own minds. And so getting out of this duality and find judgment from inside. And the place is the heart. So the connection to source of this universe is our heart. And so from there we can discern. From there we can have a like point of reference. What is like something that is positive, that is something we want to support, or what we should like keep distance.
Absolutely. And I want to affirm neutrality, because as much as like I'm calling for more firmness when it comes to not propagating these toxic ways of being, because essentially toxic ways of being and behaviors, even within our relationship dynamics, even between parent and child or husband and wife, we are no longer propagating toxic, parasitic dynamics in our day-to-day life. We're finding the source of love within. We're self-sufficient, and we're able to exchange compassion energy. So that's what I'm saying. We can extend compassion in neutrality. So I have no judgment. Like when I'm working with these entities, I'm not judging them. I'm in complete neutrality. It's not good or bad. It just is. And it's out of alignment. That is all I see. It's out of fractality. And it needs to be in fractality. And that is all. There is no narrative. There is no story. There is no judgment. There is no good or bad or right or wrong. It just is harmonic being. It's contagious in many ways. And so when you're able to hold your vessel in centripetal bliss frequency, and thank you, Dan, for all of the terminologies that we get to use and exchange because of your work. You've given us language to be able to speak about these
Thank you.
really great states of being in a scientific way.
That's it.
And it's not poetic. It's just what it is. When we say bliss, it's a very tangible state of being.
Yeah, charge radiance. Wonderful. Thank you. Did you want to say a little bit more, finishing the story, about what Thoth's intent was in that schoolyard and what was accomplished, you saw?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the cleanup. It's part of the cleanup work. I was sort of going through the parameter of where I lived. I happen to live in Mita, which is in a very central area, and so the work extended in the region. And we started with the cemeteries, and we went to the playgrounds, and then he would just take me around the playgrounds and the school. And then I came back to the same school because the Waldorf school, there is an art school for adults right next to it, and it has some of these very unpleasant energies as well. And you could even see the sculptures and the artwork, which is kind of like Roman-esque, Art Nouveau style of half human, half um, like serpent beings, water serpent beings, all over the art school, which is like very artistic and beautiful, but also some of these shape-shifting entities do not want what's best for humans as well. Part of the in the light wave of, you know, canceling the human experiment is they present rituals and methods of humans proving that they're worth nothing by selling their soul to these higher ups and proving to them that they are correct, proving to them that this experiment is not worth continuing and that this human being is not divine. And so they will make their parties and they will make their rituals, and the humans will participate and prove them right. And that is a joke. The joke's on you, the joke's on us,
Yeah, it's like
honestly.
half the teenagers in the UK are worshiping the goth movement, which is basically death, reasons for suicide. It's a horrible thing. But I just think the relationship between what you saw with the electrosmog pollution towers versus those spider
Yes.
entities versus what the big picture was.
Yeah. The spider entities and the insectoids are big picture, higher dimensional beings that are kind of alien in nature in a way. Kind of underneath that is the technology wave and the rulers of the government and the technology CEOs and the people who are actually animating a certain direction in terms of progress. Where is progress going? Where are we investing our money? And then we get to the lower level stuff of like, how do these companies operate? How do they keep their power dynamics? And what sort of sacrifices are happening on the human level to animate that? And so you get lower and lower to the family. How does the breadwinner of the family become then a power controller of the entire family? And it just goes through levels. So we can always see the sacred in the higher levels as it descends down and affects our reality in a very materialistic and tangible way. And so we begin to vilify one another. But we must understand what's happening topographically is that we are all being tested. And when if there is a mainstream culture that encourages people to sell their souls and to get away from their divinity and their soul understanding and their heart and compassionate radiance, it is now very popular to not be compassionate. It
Yeah.
is now very popular to be judgmental and dismissive and critical of the other. It is mainstream. And so this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
not be in flow with that, and how to stand your own ground and found your groundedness, which is going back to nature and understanding the compassion radiance
Yeah.
around a tree in
Exactly.
nature, in the
So
pure expression of
we've
growth
been
and life.
That's beautiful, Adalia. Thing, beautiful. We've been saying, get the hell out. I mean, get the heck out of the cities because that's where all that electrosmog is breeding all the parasites. But we need other advice for people that can't get out of the city as well. Very complicated question, but anyway.
Yeah, there is one thing also for like technology. So it's like very harmful to use technology and at the same time hate it. So if we use our mobile phones, but we hate the stations and all that, there is sort of a bad energy increasing. So also technical entities. So if you build a Wi-Fi transmitter, there is a nature being created with this. A technical being is created with that. And if you perceive that, they are sort of like slaves if nobody tells them what to do. If nobody says, well, thank you for your service, we can use this mobile phone, thank you for that, and you can do this service with love, and it will end one day. So when this unit is dismantled, you will be free for going elsewhere. This is so harmful, and parts of the nastiness of the the towers, the cell towers, is that they are not harmonized. So that's also part of what we do in geomancy, to harmonize these with groups so people perceive them. And so that is already also a relief. So how do we deal with technology? And so we can maybe increase the positive side of it, and of course develop stuff that is like on the positive side, and not like the most harmful frequencies that have been applied mostly. We are lucky in Europe with the 50 hertz
it's
network.
a little better. A little better.
It's a little better. But
but it reminds me so strongly. I was dealing with Marie Zupa and the team of theosophes who were doing the clairvoyance of subatomic particles, and she was doing these beautiful graphic pictures of the Anu. Turns out that the subatomic particles, when they're in nature, when you look at them clairvoyantly, you actually see twinkling joy. It's amazing. So subatomic particles themselves have twinkling joy. There's lots of evidence. The theosophes have all kinds of artwork. However, you take that same subatomic particle and now it's trapped in some aluminum. Now, the high voltage they used to fuse the bauxite literally means that Anu, that subatomic unit, is now in jail. I mean, hell, actually. And aluminum plant factories have some of the worst eco and health disasters on the planet, because the physics is that the existence of aluminum itself is out of embedding, out of harmony, out of distribution. It's out of everything. So might literally be, if you understand electrically the definition of evil, which is simply failure to embed in that sense. And so when you touch some aluminum, your hand goes numb because, yeah.
Wow, that is incredible.
So amazing. That's so amazing.
Failure to embed. Yeah. So the happily ever after is, now that we understand that, we can fix it, hopefully.
Yeah, and that applies to the human as well, when they're stuck in their office cells.
Yeah, exactly.
In an aluminum building.
That's right.
For 8 to 10 hours a day with no
Surrounded
sunshine and no fresh air.
Yeah, they're just
and other people's stress around them, the stress energy of others around them.
Stress and electrosmog and aluminum. And this is the average office today. I mean, it's literally hell for souls by definition. So, absolutely. So this is
we're freeing the person. We're freeing the person, but also we're freeing the spirits, the entities, the stuck ghosts, but we're also freeing the living plasma. So not just those of the souls of the dead, but also the living as well. We need to free everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think that's our happily ever after, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Dr. Ralph? I think we did pretty good today. We've got about an hour and a half here. This message is to be continued, so we're putting these at physicsofsoul.com. Professor, do you want to tell people how to reach you, the name of your book, and your web or YouTube briefly?
Yes, I can be found in YouTube mainly, because I have what I find is in YouTube in also something in English, a little bit in French, but some in German. But just enter my name in YouTube, you will find a lot of material on my end. And I'm, still writing on the improvement of the book, Blueprint for a Good Future. And so that is something that will be coming out in a while. But I find so many things that are also that need to go in there, including what we discuss now. So things are moving so fast that publishing is still a little bit delayed, but it's all that is in the making. And in YouTube, there's a lot also on restoration, how to deal with water, with wastewater, and restoration of the globe is going very fast. So it's the people doing it. It's not like governments that are sleeping in this matter, but so many. It's becoming a viral movement to make family forest gardens, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, West African countries. In India, it has become a big movement through this famous actor there and Pani Foundation. And this is so great. So despite all the craziness, so much is going on into a really, really good direction. And we have to be thoughtful of that. Large parts of the world population is not in this mindset of materialism and being in aluminum buildings, but a large part of the population is like outside a lot. They are connected to family, to friends, and they are living a lot more in a spiritual way. And so I think that keeps the balance, but we need to learn to do that as well in the West.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Ralph Otterpohl. We'll have links in the comments for sure. Thank you so much. And Dahlia, any last thoughts or connections?
Yeah, I think the work that Dr. Ralph also did in the last conference we attended in south of France was great when we got to work with the land. And I hope in the next edition we can have more experiential work with people to, allow them to experience that for themselves and sense into the energies and the magnetic lines. And also, I think on my side of things, with my connection to Thoth and the higher beings, they would also love to offer help in that regards in terms of any energy activations or any guidance around the energetic work, any teachings around that. They would love to offer it as well, so that we can share the knowledge and spread it across, so that we have more shamans in the world, so that every city has a team of shamans where they can get together and do work in groups and go to their local graveyards or go to their local playground and work either, on a Sunday morning together, because it helps when you're working in a group, of course. But also, if you just want to go for a walk, you can do a walk with intention and be energy conscious. And with your consciousness, that can also clear the field and harmonize the field when you're a harmonic being within yourself. So would love to offer more teachings and experiential knowledge to anyone who's interested. And that's just my invitation.
And we'll have links to Dahlia's YouTube channel and the film so far at physicsofsoul.com. So this is a to be continued. I certainly love Dahlia's thought also that, the teams of shaman is the collective immune system of the planet to the plasma parasites. So we need those teams of shaman. Let's join up. To be continued.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dahlia. Been a
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best to everybody.
More to come. Blessings. Bye-bye.